We submit ourselves to eternal servitude in service of a grander fulfillment. We submit the world to itself, it being a product that feeds life to life and death to death. John Standish, 2013. Hello, I'm Andrew, and I want to welcome you to Visions of the Past, a podcast all about the lore of Assassin's Creed. This is episode 78, and today we're going to talk about the group known as the Instruments of the First Will. Long story short, the Instruments of the First Will was a cult who worshipped the Isu, specifically the Isu Juno. Well, that seems a bit anticlimactic. Maybe we should get into the long story, but buckle up, because this cult has been in the series since Assassin's Creed IV, Black Flag, first appearing in that game, and then showing up in Assassin's Creed Rogue, Assassin's Creed Unity, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and the comic Assassin's Creed Uprising, along with mentions in the novel Assassin's Creed Last Descendants, Fate of the Gods, and the 2020 release of Assassin's Creed Valhalla. The first thing to know about the Instruments of the First Will is that they belong to neither the Assassins or the Templars. While they may have members working inside these organizations, they can be anyone who shares the belief that the Isu are deities to be worshipped. But what is the objective of this secret cult? This group of people not only worship the Isu, they also want to bring about the rule of the first civilization. While the Assassins and Templars view the Isu as a technologically advanced species and hope to use the pieces of Eden that the Isu built, the Instruments of the First Will are fueled by Juno's vision where humanity will live happily under her absolute rule. And in death, the followers of the cult will be granted passage into the Grey, a paradise realm where their souls will continue to live on happily. In terms of practicality, the Instruments of the First Will are doing what they can to bring Juno back into her physical form, as we will see in the records of their history. No one knows exactly how this cult came about, but they were first known by the Assassins and Templars in 2016, when the rumor of their first existence passed among Abstergo employees that there were others within a different secret organization inside the Templar Order. And then again in 2020, when Sean Hastings went so far as to say that it was possible that the Instruments were more likely to be the successor or even a proper reincarnation of the Order of the Ancients than the Templars were. The earliest known instance of the Instruments of the First Will dates back to the First World War, where in 1916 a nurse was found to be collecting blood of the soldiers that she had treated. Suspicious of her being a Templar, Winston Churchill ordered her assassination by Lydia Fry, an assassin who was the granddaughter of Jacob Fry, both being members of the British Brotherhood of Assassins. Eventually, Churchill and Fry found a German spy in their midst, who they suspected was himself a Templar. The spy did manage to escape his capture and fled into his stronghold. There, he instructed all of his followers to burn everything related to Juno and the Isu, suggesting that this was a stronghold that belonged to the Instruments of the First Will instead of to the Templar Order. Lydia eventually caught up to him and killed everyone in that stronghold. In 2013, there was an attempt from the Instruments to recruit people from Abstergo Industries. Their agent was the head of IT at Abstergo Entertainment in Montreal, and was himself a sage of Aita, Juno's husband. His name? John Standish. And Standish distributed the cult's manifesto and propaganda throughout the organization. He also helped the Assassins by giving them the means to hack into Abstergo's digital infrastructures. But he also blackmailed a research analyst that worked at Abstergo, and used that research analyst to steal information for the Assassins by hacking into workstations and server rooms of Abstergo. Though his true intention was to provide Juno, who was then in a digital form, a human body, for her to use to bring her into the real world. His plans didn't work out as Juno was weakened by her prolonged state in her digital form, and she was unable to transfer herself into the body of the research analyst. Running out of patience, Standish then attempted to kill the said research analyst, only to have himself murdered by the security at Abstergo. This research analyst, of course, did end up leaving Abstergo shortly after the incident. In 2015, a Shroud of Eden was discovered in a vault beneath Buckingham Palace in London, England. This information was known to both the Templars and Assassins, and both groups sent in teams to retrieve the Shroud, which, after all was said and done, ended up in the hands of a Templar by the name of Violet de Costa. Violet, though, was part of the Instruments of the First Will, and her objective was to steal the Shroud and return it to the cult, because this Shroud was regarded by Juno as the most important piece of Eden that can help bring her back. After the incident in Buckingham Palace, Master Templar Johanni Otto Berg started to crack down on this rumored cult within the Templar Order. His pursuit landed him in Berlin, where he encountered who he thought was an assassin spy, Heinrich Hart. During their fight, Hart revealed that he was never an assassin spy and was a follower of the Instruments of the First Will. After revealing himself, he set off a bomb, killing himself along with 170 other people. Berg, however, survived this explosion and brought the news back to the Templars. The Assassins caught wind of this and also began their own rigorous investigations behind any irregularities that happened within their organization. Both Assassins and Templars started treating the Instruments of the First Will as a serious underground threat instead of just a rumor. The Instruments of the First Will was seemingly brought to an end, though. In August 2018, on a day known as Resurrection Day, after all of their efforts of scheming and leeching resources from both organizations who were at war with each other, the cult was able to gather all the resources they needed to bring back their god Juno. In essence, they were able to hijack Abstergo's latest project, the Phoenix Project, which aimed to sequence the full Isu genome. They extracted Isu DNA from a sage known as Elijah, and they obtained the Kui Noir, a piece of Eden in the form of a diamond. With these things in possession, the Instruments were able to create an Isu fetus, with the aim of allowing Juno to use it as her body. And it is important to note that Elijah wasn't just any sage, as we discussed in more detail last week. He was the illegitimate son of Desmond Miles. With the fetus created, the cult accelerated its growth into an adult body by using the fabric from the Shroud of Eden. At long last, the Instruments of the First Will succeeded in their first step of bringing about the rule of the first civilization, the resurrection of their god Juno. This victory, however, was short-lived. Conflict begun right as Juno was taking her first steps into the physical world, when both the Assassins and Templars breached the Phoenix Project's facility. Juno was able to use her powers to disable most of the intruders, until Elijah used the Kui Noir. With this artifact, he tricked Juno into seeing another Isu entity, Consus. In that illusion, Consus was mocking Juno's immaturity and her desire to control humanity, whereas in reality, Juno was actually talking to a coffee cup. While she was under the influence of the illusion, this opened a window of opportunity to allow the assassin, Charlotte de la Cruz, to sink her hidden blade into Juno's neck. And this was how the Templars and the Assassins, for the first time in recorded history, worked together to kill an Isu. While this was all happening, other Templars planted explosives around the facility. Once Juno was dead, Berg detonated the bombs. The remaining followers were detained by the Templars, while the Templar turncoat, Violet de Costa, the one who personally stole the Shroud of Eden, was killed by Otto Berg himself for her betrayal. And as for the Assassins, everyone except Charlotte was able to slip away once Juno was killed. With their facility destroyed and their god killed, the Isu worshipping cult seemingly disbanded, as that is the last we have seen them since the death of Juno. When you sit back and think about it, it makes complete sense that there would be a cult dedicated to the return of the Isu. We have seen, especially in the last 3 games, more and more people knowing who the Isu were and about the things that they created. Add to that the multiple sages and different Isu cults, it makes complete sense that one of them would want the Isu to return, even if they didn't know fully what they were worshipping. Even if they were not recognized as such, we see the beginnings of the instruments in older polytheistic religions that were based around the Isu. Religions like the ancient Greeks, the ancient Romans, and the Scandinavians of the Middle Ages. As time went on, and people found out more and more of the truth behind their myths, it was only a matter of time before someone would come along and want to bring them back from extinction, even if it was for no other reason than just because they could. I do wonder, like Sean did, if the instruments are not the true successors of the Order of the Ancients, though. Even if the only member of the Order of the Ancients in England at the end of the 9th century that survived Eivor Bjarnstadr was King Alfred the Great, and out of those ashes the Templar Order as we know grew, I can see scenarios that someone could have found the writings of Folke, or some unknown disciple of hers could have continued her work, creating the instruments of the First Will from her title within the order, as she was known as the Instrument. There is so much of the early history of the instruments that we don't know, that we could sit and speculate on, but when we get into what we do know, they are an interesting foil for both the Templars and the Assassins, working from within, not necessarily to bring down the two organizations, but to use them to bring the Isu back into power and to put humans back into the roles that they were created for. But what are your thoughts on the instruments of the First Will? Let me know over on Twitter at visions_AC. Thank you for joining me today. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for new episodes. If you love stories about Assassin's Creed lore, please follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform. And tell your friends about this podcast too. If you have any questions about Assassin's Creed or topics that you'd like me to cover, please feel free to hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at visions_AC. And you can find those links in the show notes below. Until next time, my assassin friends, make sure to follow the Creed. And to those Templars listening, may the Father of Understanding guide you.